Alright, so today we're going to be checking out the new character Blanc, because apparently the Tetra company can't have enough bunny girls, so in this update we're getting 3. But with that said, I'm not complaining, and I actually want them to add more, because even though we have 5 bunny girls right now, if you wanted to make a team out of them, your team won't be functional. Because we have Alice who is a Burst type 3, we have Rupee, Burst 2, we also have Blanc, Burst 2, Viper, Burst 2, and then a few weeks later we'll have Noir who is a Burst type 3. So maybe another bunny girl character wouldn't hurt. Maybe just take Soda or Volume and give them a bunny girl outfit. But regardless, before I actually start the video, I just want to give you a quick heads up that this video will be different from my other guide videos. Because in the past, I heavily scripted my videos, but now I feel like I should do more of an impromptu type video, where I just talk about how good I think the character is, my thoughts on their kit, and the different things that you can do to improve their performance in game. So first up, let's talk about the basics. Blanc is a Burst type 2 defender from the Tetra line of units. She uses an assault rifle weapon, and she also has the wind element. I don't usually mention the character's squad in my videos, but this is going to be important, especially in Blanc's case, as you will see in her kit. And speaking of, let's move on to her kit. Her skill 1 is a passive skill that activates after landing 120 bullets. This basically gives her team a shield that lasts for 5 seconds, and this will scale based on her maximum HP. This ability is actually really good, and it's almost the same as Senti's shield. The only difference is that you can actually choose when to use this shield because of the skill condition. Let's say that you're up against Chatterbox and you want to protect your characters from the jumping attack. What you can do is you can basically count your attacks so that you land your 120th bullet the second before Chatterbox does his jumping attack. So that is really good, and I would say that it's even better than Senti's shield. The only thing that Senti has going for her is that her shield actually goes up more often, simply because of her skill 1. But other than that, if you actually play on manual mode and you properly time the shields with Blanc, then I can see this being better, especially with more investment. Moving on, we have her skill 2. This activates after full burst ends and affects all your allies. It basically heals all of your characters based on Blanc's maximum HP. It heals your characters based on 2.41% of Blanc's maximum HP every second for 5 seconds. And of course, the 2.41% value can go up or down depending on your skill level. But generally, this effect is really good, especially when combined with her burst. With that said, her skill 2 has a second effect that activates when full burst ends. This will decrease the cooldown duration of her burst by 40.76 seconds. But this will only trigger if you have an ally from the same squad on the battlefield. So that means that you need to have Noir on your team if you want to get the 40-second cooldown duration on her burst. We have seen other characters that work hand in hand in the past. So for example, we have Alice and Admi. Those two characters work really well if you put them in the same team, but they're not necessarily dysfunctional if you put them in different teams. But for Blanc's case, you actually get a big disadvantage if you don't use Noir in your team. This 40-second cooldown reduction is huge, especially considering that you get this value at level 1. Ultimately, I'm not a big fan of this, especially when you take a look at Noir's kit and Blanc's kit. Blanc can pretty much be in any team because her kit is very flexible, but when you take a look at Noir's kit, it's made for close range stages, especially for the ones with a lot of interruption parts like the Gravedigger. So considering that, if you want to get this 40-second cooldown reduction, you will always have to use Noir with Blanc. So that means that you will be sacrificing your team's versatility, and that also means that if you're trying to use this outside of close range stages, one of your DPS characters will underperform because Noir is only good for close range. Moving on, let's take a look at her burst. Her burst affects all her allies and constantly recovers 2.65% of her attack as HP every 1 second for 8 seconds. It has another effect that applies to one of your allies with the lowest HP and basically gives them invincibility for 10 seconds, and this also increases their maximum HP by 23.04% for 10 seconds. And additionally, this also has a third effect that affects all your enemies, and this will basically increase their damage taken by 26.48% for 10 seconds. So overall, this is a really good burst ability simply because it has a total of 3 effects. The only problem is that it has a 60-second cooldown, so if you want to get the most value out of this ability, you will have to use Noir in the same team as Blanc. So just by looking at this, it's obvious that Blanc is not a free-to-play friendly unit, because if you are pulling for Blanc, you need to pull for Noir. Just because the second effect on her second skill makes a big difference on how this character works. So moving on, what can you do to improve this character's performance? Well, obviously for one, you can pull for Noir because you need to have that cooldown reduction from her second skill. But aside from that, what you can do is that you can get more ammo capacity increase from your gear. So this means that you need to use a wingman cube so that you can get the max ammo capacity increase from this item. Another thing is that if you're already farming for endgame equipment, one more thing that you can do is you can aim for the increased max ammo capacity bonus from your overload gear. This will make it so that Blanc doesn't have to reload as often, and she will possibly even have enough bullets to get her shield off without reloading. So moving on, let's talk about the team compositions. Your teams will depend on whether you have Noir or not. Because if you don't have Noir, Blanc will be stuck with her 60-second cooldown on her burst. So if that's the case, you will be forced to use another burst 2 character with a 20-second cooldown. As for the rest of your characters, you can basically use any character that you want. On the other hand, once Noir gets released, you will be able to get away with Blanc being your solo burst 2 unit. So on paper, Blanc is a good character, but there are just a few things on her kit that make her a very expensive or very complicated character to use. But if you're able to take care of those problems, then I can see her being a viable option. And one thing that I know a lot of people will ask is if she is a better unit than Senti. And to that I will say no. Simply because if you use Blanc, you will basically limit your team's flexibility. Because if you don't use Noir on your team, you will have to deal with that 60-second cooldown burst. And even if you are using Noir in your team, you're basically having to deal with a character that is using his shotgun, who is not always good in many situations. There are just a lot of disadvantages when using this character, so you are almost always better off using Senti in your team. So overall, if I were to put this character on a tier list, I would put her on low A tier or high B tier. Just because there's a ton of disadvantages you have to deal with when you do decide to use her. So yeah, that's about everything I have for this character. Blanc's kit is pretty simple, so I didn't really feel like making a full-blown guide video like I used to. So because of that, I wanted to focus more on her kit, what I don't like about her kit, and the things that you can do to improve her performance in game. With that being said, if you have any questions, feel free to put it down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.